Daro, I mean, as someone working with a camera, you have to really be literally in the thick of all of this. Can you just describe what you've experienced over the last couple of weeks and what you're seeing, what's going on? Bring us into it.
Um, First, if you don't mind, I can just to say briefly about Georgia that we're a very tiny nation of under 4 million people. It's on the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And I feel like much of the outside world knows very little of our country. And much of the time, our existence is threatened by the aggression from our neighbor, Russia. 20% of our country approximately is occupied by Russia. We have two breakaway regions, and one of them is South Ossetia. And even today, like Russian forces are continuing to push their administrative boundary to expand control and flaunt their power. So moving forward, it was very important for us to get the EU candidacy. It was a huge deal. And this protest that erupted now is no surprise because it was so crucial to get the candidacy at first, and now this happened. And to answer your question about media, I feel like recent protests in Georgia has brought a significant attention because of the police brutality against media and protesters. And the violence was escalating like really fast, and it was the attacks on the media was to bring the example. One of the first journalists, like Guram Rogava, who was covering the protests, was struck in the head by this Riot policeman, causing severe injuries for him, including facial fractures. And he was pretty much saved because the doctor told him that if it was like millimeters fall in a different place, he would lose the feeling in his legs and hands. So I
And
think
who is he hurt by? Who was it, the
uh,
police or was it?
it was a weird policeman. There's videos of it, which one can see on the internet. And I think there are 400 individuals that have been detained so far. And almost all of them have physical violence during the arrest and injuries such as broken noses and concussion. Like from my personal experience, I had this moment. It was one of the first days that the clash happened between the police and the protesters. And I always, from my previous experiences, when I stay close to the police, I'm more safe in a way that I don't get attacked. And this is what I did. I stayed behind a little bit when that clash happened. And at some point, it was only me and a cameraman who I didn't know who he was, but we were surrounded by all this weird police. And I remember they surrounded us, and I put my hands up as to say that, like, don't arrest me or don't touch me. But they kind of grabbed the cameraman and they started beating him. And I started saying like, stop, he's a journalist, but I'm sure they didn't listen to me, but at some point they stopped. But he was beaten really, really badly. So I don't know what stopped them for beating me, but they definitely beat him. So it was very it was this situation where I thought there was this moment where you're not supposed to attack the media, but this is not the case during this protest because a lot of my colleagues have been attacked and they have been in the hospital and with surgeries. And so I think it's a very critical situation with the media and the police.
Sophiko, having covered for so many years, like how are you seeing the security situation on the ground for your teams, and what are you doing to
Yeah,
help keep people safe?
yeah, yeah, really, I covered like everything, like starting the war, the revolutions, terror attacks, and etc. And recently, like a few days ago, I was telling my colleague that I have never ever felt so insecure in Tbilisi, so insecure while doing my job. And this is when you're covering, let's say, protests, we all know the basics that we have to do in order to be safe, right? You don't have to stay in front, like in the middle of the the confronting sides, trying to find some high vintage point and etc. But unfortunately, this time it wasn't like that, because you think that if you are attacked, it is some high it is by chance, and nobody will deliberately attack the journalists, especially the law enforcement. But it is not the case this time, unfortunately. As Daro mentioned, the case of Guram Rogaba, he's the very famous TV journalist who was doing the live broadcast at the protest. He was standing there for hours. He was holding the microphone. The cameraman was next to him, and he was brutally attacked by a man in the black uniform with his the face was masked, and he survived miraculously. And then several these kind of attacks happened, and it was all on live TV, and it happened on the main avenue, Rustaveli Avenue, where the protesters and the police were clashing. And so, and then there was a public outrage, and even the ruling party representatives and the prime minister said that it is unacceptable that the journalists are attacked. And what happened now, the tactics have changed. When the riot police arrives, they let us film, so they do not touch us. Although before we had verbally and physically abused, including me and my cameraman, and lots of journalists were there. But if you go a step to the streets nearby, like few steps, then you will be attacked by a mob. They are dressed in the black, I don't know, the black clothes. The faces are covered, and even though, and they know that they are attacking journalists, the foreign journalists, local journalists, the journalists which have like a visibly they are journalists, right? They are holding the cameras or the microphones. They were attacked brutally, beaten. And the worst thing is that nobody is held accountable for that. Nobody has been arrested for that. Also, these attacks in many cases happen on live TV, and it is very, very alarming. That's why I thought that it is first time in my entire life, in my entire career, that I feel that I'm not secure in my own city covering the events that are unfolding. And it is very alarming that nobody is held accountable so far.
Do any of you have any explanation for why it's different now? Like what has changed? Like why this is so much more dangerous and why the tactics are so much more insidious?
Desperation. I think the government realizes that there's something different about these protests. The way, how quickly this escalated, Thanksgiving Day in the US, all this came to a head. They nominated, for the future president to be nominated, is it on Saturday, so tomorrow, is a, anti-American, anti-Western, just kind of mean guy who is very profane, says nasty things in parliament. That was a slap in the face, I think, for the Georgian people. And then turning away from the EU. And the way that people reacted, even after 5 months of protests that were, the violence was appalling then. The way people came out immediately on that day, because 2 days before that, there was a protest and it was kind of sad. It was raining. There weren't many people. It was when Parliament was first sworn in, the illegitimate Parliament, I would say. And people were kind of mocking the situation. And then all of a sudden, that day, everything just exploded. And, people keep making comparisons to Maidan, which the article I just wrote, I'm saying it's not a Maidan, but that is one similarity where you had just, a government turn away from the EU and all of a sudden people are out in the cold, in the snow, getting sprayed with fire hoses, which are spiked with tear gas, by the way. It's an appalling thing they do. But I think it just shows that they are genuinely desperate. They've tried tactics over the last 15 days. They've tried, having the riot police come in. They've tried the situation Daro was talking about, where they just isolate people and beat them. They go after journalists. They keep changing it up, and none of it works. And so they only get more brutal. But that would be my explanation just right away.